And our next guest has been writing about retirement and aging and related issues for quite some time. He has an excellent new piece in the New York Times I encourage you to take a look at. Mark J. Miller writes. He is a columnist for Reuters and Morning Star and Wealth Management and possibly some other places as well as contributing pieces to the Times, AARP magazine, and elsewhere. And his latest piece that has the headline, have a Social Security question, please hold. And first of all, I want to say, Mark J. Miller, thanks for coming on the program.
Richard, thanks so much for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is a terrific piece, and we really wanted to put a spotlight on it. I want to start with a quick anecdote. Knowing that we were going to try to get you on the program, the other day, I think it was Monday morning, I called my local Social Security office, and we talk about hold times of 45 minutes and those sorts of things. What I got was a recorded message saying there's nobody to help me right now, and I should try later if I can't find what I need on the website to try another time. I should have written down exactly what it said, but it basically said, no, nobody here. And I don't know if that's unusual or not, but it seems to me, and your piece highlights this extremely well, that we just have almost like an army withdrawing from a region or something, that Congress is forcing the Social Security Administration to pull out of a lot of the services it used to provide.
So they're still providing the same, at least on paper, the same scope of services. But what's happened is that with budget cuts over the last decade or so, and I should hasten to point out that the budget cuts aren't specifically really targeting the Social Security Administration, but really result from the sequestration legislation that ended the 2011 government shutdown scenario. So Social Security was subject to a lot of the same kinds of cuts that other government agencies were, but it's been this confluence of the budget cuts, which have forced staff cuts, at the same time that Social Security is serving more people. So it's, the workload increases, the staff is down, and Social Security has also lost a lot of its most seasoned people because a lot of the staff attrition, a lot of the staff cutting has come through attrition. So you get the most experienced people like taking early retirement and the like. So there's a loss of headcount and there's a brain drain issue there as well. And yes, you wind up with situations like you ran into. One of the telling statistics that I reported in the story is when you try to call into the toll-free number where waiting times have soared, but 15% of people who call the toll-free number just get a busy signal these days. So that's, mirroring what you're describing, I think.
Yeah, and it's dispiriting. Now let's talk, Mark, you don't, in your piece, doesn't go quite as much into the budget process itself, and I don't want to do what's always my mistake of going into the nerdy stuff too quickly, but my understanding is that Social Security's administrative budget is paid out of the payroll tax that funds Social Security.
Right.
So if that's the case, why is that being treated like other expenditures that contribute to the deficit or whatever?
Right. Good question. And I think one of the things that's most angering about this situation is that we pay for these services out of the payroll taxes that we contribute and that our employers contribute. But due to the peculiar ways that the budget is accounted for, the administrative budget, even though it is paid for through the payroll tax, is still under the supervision of Congress, and the spending still counts against the funding limits of the Budget Control Act that we were just discussing, which is just an accounting thing. It's not, as you're pointing out, it's not real money against the federal budget. But this is what's going on, is that Congress gets to oversee the proposed budget. So Social Security will propose a budget, the White House puts a budget in, and then Congress makes a decision. Now, Congress has increased the budget each of the last 2 years, actually overriding the White House recommendation. And I think there's a growing awareness in Congress that this is an issue. And, closing of Social Security offices for a politician, that's a little bit like having a military base close in your district. It's not something that really any sensible politician wants to see because it's going to anger constituents. So things are a little bit on the mend, but Social Security is in a deep hole. Its budget for this fiscal year is a little over 11 billion, and if the budget had just kept up with inflation during all these intervening years, it would be about $1.3 billion higher than that. So you get a sense of just how long it would take to rebuild those dollars. And it's not even just rebuilding, but what Social Security really needs is a sustained, predictable year in, year out budget that allows them to start hiring and rebuilding, more than they've been able really to do. So, there's a long way to go on this.
Yeah, and I do, your article makes clear that there's at least some movement back in the right direction, but that's a great way to put, the long-term need. And I think, the fact that it's angering, I think is also accurate. And again, we're talking with Mark J. Miller about his article in the New York Times, Have a Social Security Question, Please Hold. And one of the reasons I find it angering is that as you explain, as you write in your Times piece, there are people who, I'll personalize it. If I pay in through my payroll taxes for, among other things, have disability insurance, including long-term disability insurance through Social Security. If I become disabled and unable to work, and I'm forced to wait a year to collect the first benefits because of these cuts, might die in the year and never get the benefits I'm entitled, leaving my family worse off or whatever, I'm actually not getting what I paid for because the way I would put it is because of some political machinations in Washington. And yes, that makes me angry.
Right. And, I think one of the things that's interesting about Social Security, well, there are many things that are interesting about Social Security. It's one of my favorite topics to write about. But one thing that I think a lot of people don't realize is just the extent to which it touches the lives of Americans. There's very few government agencies that touch our lives to the extent that Social Security does. There's 69 million people receiving benefits this year, whether that's retirement or disability or supplemental security income. Social Security is going to pay out 1.1 trillion in benefits this year. I mean, can't think of, maybe the post office is more of a more ubiquitous government agency than Social Security, but it's hard to think of another one. The reason I'm bringing this up is I think that this dysfunction contributes to this sense that people have that government doesn't work. And that is really unfortunate because Social Security really does work in so many ways. But, a more conspiratorial view of this story would be that opponents of Social Security like to see the dysfunction growing because it bolsters the argument that government doesn't know what it's doing, and therefore we should privatize everything.
Yeah, I'm really glad you brought that up because I've actually wondered about that. I live and work here in Washington, D.C., and yet I don't have a clear-cut answer myself. I will confess that I have what you described as a conspiratorial turn of mind. It's occurred to me that Republicans might be starving this program, especially Republicans might be starving this program and then saying, see, government doesn't work. My answer when people say, well, government doesn't work as well as the private sector, it's too bureaucratic, is call Comcast or your cable provider and then get back to me about that. But yeah, I've wondered if it isn't a self-fulfilling prophecy. Honestly, I don't know the answer to that one. At first, I was sure it was true. Now I'm not sure, but it's either way that seems to be the outcome. There's another dimension to this too, which you touch on in your story, Mark J. Miller, and that's that they're trying to push people to do everything online. Now, I didn't do it in anticipation of this meeting, but a few months ago, I think maybe a year ago, I know what it was. I wrote about this Vision 2020 automation thing that came out during the Obama era. So it was a couple of years ago. And I wrote, I went online to see, we used to get every year a statement of what our projected Social Security earnings were. Those used to be mailed out yearly. And as you know, I'm sure. And then they stopped coming. And then you had to go online to get them. And so I thought, well, I'll go online and get them. I found it, and I used to work in the tech field. I found it extraordinarily confusing and difficult to make it through the system.
To get it set up, yeah.
To get it set up, right. Once you get it set up, it's okay. But and then I tweeted about it, and people wanted to be contrarian with me. They said, no, it's easy. It's like, why do people do that online? But it wasn't, for me, it wasn't easy, and I'm not stupid. So my point being, if it's not easy for me, it's not easy for millions of people. You talk about internet access issues, right. And we get that digital divide question.
Yes.
I mean, I guess my point is the internet is really not going to fix this, is it?
It's not the answer for everyone, that's for sure. I think that, so the drive for technology modernization at the Social Security Administration has to be counted as a plus in two ways. One is they're in the middle of upgrading decades-old internal computer infrastructure. They're running on really old IT systems internally that crash quite frequently. I mean, I've been in Social Security offices while reporting this story and observed where they come on the loudspeaker and say, we're sorry, we have to stop working as our system just crashed. And that's a routine event. So that's something that's being addressed and needs to be addressed. The drive, what you're asking about, the drive to get people to transact business over the internet, again, nothing wrong with it. And there's been a big increase in the numbers of people who do that, who file for benefits and the like online. That's I think arguably has reduced the pressure overall on the staff, to the extent that they've been able to offload some of that. But it's not a complete solution because there's a certain amount of the public that wants and needs to come in and transact business with Social Security, either in person or get some help over the phone. Digital divide is certainly one example of that. So, I think it's an admirable thing to be doing, but it's an and situation. It's not either or. Now, Social Security contends that they're going to move everything online within the next couple of decades, and I just think that's wrong-headed, and I don't think it's realistic.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. Yeah, obviously there are great things about moving it online, and I'm sure that's true. What I wonder about, though, and where I think these cuts are particularly problematic, is that Social Security and Medicare they're not simple programs.
Right. Exactly.
You need a human, and when you talk about the brain drain, the
yes.
technology question and the brain drain question intersect, because you really need somebody to tell you, well, you can't really do that, but you can do this, or if you can do it this way, but the consequence will be that, so you want to wait this, right? The navigation function, I would call it.
Yeah. In fact, I quote somebody in the story who works at a field office who talks about they often have to intervene and help people who make mistakes with an online filing. So that's definitely an issue. Yeah, I think it's something that I just wouldn't want to go as far as to say that there's no point in providing the access to these services online. But I agree very much that Social Security and Medicare both are complex. Like I write about Medicare quite a bit as well, and I'm always urging people to try to get some assistance with their fall enrollment, because you can save a lot of money by doing that as you navigate all the complexities that are endemic with the program. So I don't disagree with what you're saying at all.
Yeah, and hopefully, just to be clear, I wasn't saying they shouldn't go online.
I know you're not. Yeah.
I was saying, I think they use it sometimes as a mask to obscure.
Yeah.
The politicians use it as a mask to obscure the problems that can't be solved that way.
Richard, I wanted to go back to what you said about the mailing of the statements and the rest of that. That's, to me, another kind of outrageous, dumb decision that's been made, because that annual statement is an important way of getting a reminder in front of people every year via the mail of what they can expect in benefits. And, it's I think, a dumb thing that they've cut back on them so dramatically. The issues around signing up for an online account are related mainly to issues around identity theft and fraud, because if you think about the importance of protecting your Social Security information. So that they've made it, a little bit tough to sign up, because mostly what you're doing is running a gauntlet of things to make sure you are who you say you are. That's, I think, been the primary problem and issue that they've dealt with there.
Yeah, okay. I mean, I it's been a while. I have to go back and take a look. That makes perfect sense to me. But
it's also worth for people to know that once you do get signed up, you can download a PDF of your statement anytime you want to, which is great. So, once you get into the system, you always have access to your statement, which is a great sort of foundational starting point to any decision you might be making about a benefit filing.
Yeah, I mean, I will say my impression was it's easy. It was easier to set up an American Express account online, which is okay, But so, what is the main takeaway you would want people to have about this article before I let you go? First of all, people should read it, of course, and I encourage people to do that. But what do you think is the main?
I think the
point
main
here?
takeaway is we need support for the running of the Social Security Administration. We need to, people should, if they're concerned about this, should speak up and let their legislators know that they want to see the funding, the budget of this agency funded properly, that it's not okay to have people wasting their time waiting for an hour plus on the phone, or sitting around all morning in a Social Security office waiting to be seen by somebody. That's just not an acceptable level of service. It can be fixed, but it really is going to require a sustained multi-year improvement in the agency's budget before it can get back to where it was.
Great. Well, I couldn't summarize it any better than that, nor would I try. So Mark J. Miller, writer on retirement and aging issues, and source writer of the recent New York Times piece, Have a Social Security Question, Please Hold. Thanks so much for writing this, and thanks for coming on the program.
Thanks, Richard. Appreciate it.